What's going on, Bruno Boys Nation? I'm Marc Caviglia. Hopefully all of you guys were victorious in Week 3 of your fantasy football matchups, and you're sitting somewhere above 500, whether it's 3-0 or 2-1. Hey, and if you're 0-3 or 1-2, don't panic. There's a lot of fantasy football left. You still have 10 weeks until your playoffs, and you could get hot, find a way to get into the playoffs, and not worry about that slow start. What I want to go ahead and do today is take a look at the hot takes I gave you in Week 3 and see which guys I hit on and which guys I missed on. And there was a few guys that I would say I didn't hit or miss on, which we'll discuss as well. Let's go ahead and talk about the quarterbacks. And one quarterback that I swung and missed on was Baker Mayfield. I talked about him being a top 15 quarterback. I said he was probably going to be 250 yards, 2 scores, and maybe get you some rushing yards. It wasn't that Mayfield played bad. He was 16 of 23, 156 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. The problem was that the Browns they forced 5 turnovers, and they had great field position throughout the entire afternoon. So Mayfield played with a lot of short fields, and that's why he couldn't rack up the yardage totals. He did finish as the quarterback number 22 overall. Another quarterback I wouldn't say I completely missed on, but I'll put him in this category, is Deshaun Watson of the Houston Texans. I talked about how it was back against the wall. The Texans are going to have to find a way to win so they don't go to 0-3. Well, they lost 27, 28, 21, and Watson was just okay. 19 of 27, 264 yards, 2 touchdown passes, 1 interception. Finished as a quarterback number 18. I said he was going to be a quarterback number 10. I said he was going to have 300 or more passing yards and maybe flirt with 3 touchdowns. So I was off a little bit. A guy I would say that was pretty neutral on at the quarterback position was Drew Brees. I said he was going to be a low-end quarterback number 1. He finished as QB 8. He was 29 of 36, 288 passing yards, 3 touchdown passes. The Saints didn't win the game. I said Brees was going to have 275 yards max and 2 touchdowns, so it was a little bit off on both. I wouldn't say it's a hit. I wouldn't say it's a miss. Brees did benefit from some big plays from Alvin Kamara where he tossed him the ball on a flat in the flat or a halfback screen, and Kamara took it to the house. Looking at the running back position, guy that I would say I pinpointed his potential game and he made me look good was Jeff Wilson of the San Francisco 49ers. He had 12 runs for just 15 yards. He punched in a touchdown. He had 3 catches on 3 targets for 54 yards and also scored a touchdown. This is the 3rd straight game where Wilson has 8 or more touches that he's turned it into 2 touchdowns total. Finished as a running back number 9 in .5 PPR leagues. And moving forward, until the 49ers get healthy with Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman, you're going to see Wilson have a big role, especially considering Jerick McKinnon left the game with an injury as well, too. And he's going to be questionable moving into week number 4. Another running back that produced like we thought he would was Devin Singletary, the Buffalo Bills. He finished as the RB19. We said he was going to be a running back number 2, and that's exactly what he did. He went for 71 rushing yards, 50 receiving yards. He had 18 total touches, and the Bills won a shootout. Singletary had a few plays where he broke a big one, and he just got tackled right before the end zone. We said he was going to have over 100 total yards, and he did that. Running backs that I missed on, and this was a big miss, was Josh Kelly. I owned him in a lot of daily fantasy leagues, and I thought he was going to be a guy that was going to continue the trend upward based off 2 good weeks to start the season. And you know what? The problem with Kelly was he fumbled early, and Anthony Lynn shied away from him. But if you look at the actual totals, he had 8 carries for 43 rushing yards. That's a 5.4 yard per carry average. He had 2 targets, 2 receptions, 9 yards. If Kelly doesn't lose that fumble there, he's well on his way to a 100-yard game, and he's a guy that we have in our Week 3 fantasy football hot take hits section. So it's a miss, but Kelly needs to hang on to the football. Should be interesting to see what goes on in Week 4 and moving forward. I know that Anthony Lynn doesn't like guys who fumble, but there is a lot of value from Kelly, and I think he's going to get another shot or 2 to really get back into the mix and put together some pretty good games. Todd Gurley, I wouldn't necessarily call him a hit or miss. I put him in the miss category, and that's because his 14.7 fantasy points per game ranked him as the running back number 17. We did say he was going to be a running back number 2, which is exactly where he finished. But he scored a touchdown. That's what put him over the top. When I projected Gurley last week, I said he was going to finish anywhere from 70 to 80 rushing yards, and he was 14 rushes for 80 total yards. He had he had one reception on 2 targets. His touches were down this week. The Falcons blew another big lead in the fourth quarter. Gurley's a guy that I think is going to be touchdown dependent most weeks. And while I didn't officially nail his projection because he scored, we were right on the yardage total. Moving on to the wide receiver position, Deontay Johnson, I'll get it out of the way. That was a miss. Had nothing to do with the actual game performance and everything to do with the fact that, unfortunately, Johnson went down with an early concussion in the first half, and he wasn't able to complete the rest of the game. No targets. Did have 1 rush for 9 yards. It's a miss, but it's an injury miss, so I'm not too worried about that. A guy that we hit on was A.J. Green. We discussed at length about how there's so many mouths to feed with him and Tyler Boyd in the Cincinnati passing game that it's going to be tough to identify which receiver is going to have the better week each week. Well, Boyd, for the second straight week, had the better performance. And now we got to factor in T. Higgins. The rookie had 2 touchdown receptions in week number 3 and could be a guy that sees the ball in the red zone moving forward. A.J. Green definitely hit on him. 6.1 fantasy points in half PPR leagues. Finished as wide receiver number 67 in those leagues. 5 catches, 6 targets, 36 total yards. I'm not saying to drop A.J. Green, but he's got to stay on your bench for the time being. Another wide receiver that we hit on was Marvin Jones. 3 receptions, 51 yards, 3 total targets. Kenny Galladay returned, and it looked like Jones was overshadowed a little bit. He just hasn't gotten off to a good start this season, which is unfortunate because there is some value there. But I can see him picking it up a little bit as the season moves forward and Galladay remains healthy and he starts being able to face second-rate defensive backs. Jones finished as wide receiver number 53 this week, and another guy that you keep on your bench until you see some consistency from him week to week. A wide receiver that we missed on was Corey Davis. I talked about him being a surefire wide receiver number 2 this week. The matchup was right, but the Titans were fortunate enough to exploit the Vikings' run defense. Derrick Henry went off. He had a big second half, and Davis just didn't see the targets that I expected. He had 5 catches for 69 yards, but only 6 targets. He finished as a wide receiver 42 in 0.5 PPR leagues with 9.4 fantasy points. Like I said, a situation where it's Derrick Henry doing the bulk of the workload for Tennessee, and we saw Khalif Raymond catch a couple deep balls from Ryan Tannehill as well. So not too worried about that. I think Davis has some really good value, especially with A.J. Brown out, but he just didn't live up to the hype that I expected this week. Staying in the same game, a guy that I feel confident that we nailed was Jono Smith. He didn't score a touchdown like we had hoped for, but he had 5 catches, 61 yards, 8 targets. He finished as the tight end number 10 this past week with 8.6 fantasy points. Like I said, the game flow dictated Derrick Henry gets the football a lot. Henry got 2 touchdowns in short yardage goal line situations. Those were in the past situations where Smith was targeted the first 2 weeks of the season, but it didn't work out this way. But we said Smith was going to be inside the top 10, and he produced to his total. Another guy that we missed on this week at the kicker position, guys, was Michael Bagley. This was a great matchup for him. The Panthers had been really bad defensively, giving up a bunch of field goal chances, extra points the first 2 weeks of the season, but they bucked up this week. They were able to get their first win this season. They contained the Chargers' offense, and Bagley just didn't get the kicking chances. He only had 1 field goal attempt, 1 point after touchdown attempt. He finished tied for the 24th best kicker this week, and unfortunately, that was a big swing and a miss. I'm not too worried about it. Like I said, I stream kickers throughout the fantasy football season, and I'm already digging deep into the week 4 numbers to try to find that guy for you that's going to help you be successful. The biggest hit of the entire weekend for me was the Indianapolis Colts defense. I ranked them as my top defense. They finished as the top defense. They scored 2 touchdowns. They had 3 interceptions, 2 quarterback sacks. They forced a fumble. They only allowed 7 total points to New York Jets Jets offense. This was the biggest lock of the week. This one was over by the first quarter when the Colts scored a defensive touchdown. And when the matchup is right, Indianapolis is really looking like a good play. They're playing good football. They have some consistency on offense with Phillip Rivers, which means the defense doesn't have to be on the field as much as it's used to in the past. And this is going to go ahead and help their overall defensive totals. And the Colts definitely put together a great performance. So you look at it, guys, a little bit over 50% this week with the hits and misses in our week 3 hot takes. I'm looking forward to get back after it in week number 4. Freddie pinpointed some games and some players that I think have some great value or that you might want to avoid. And as always, guys, head over to BrunoBoys.net. Check out all of our fantasy football articles we have. Ernie Estrella, Brad Berryman, they do an excellent job of giving you guys all the information on who you should pick up on the waiver wire, who you should start, who you should sit. We have live chats going on 24/7. I go ahead and give you guys all of my my rankings each week, and we've added a bunch of sports betting analysis and picks to our mix since the start of the NFL season. We have Major League Baseball picks, we have we have NFL picks, college football picks, even some hockey stuff before the Stanley Cup ended. We're looking forward to growing that part of Bruno Boys, and if you have any questions, always reach out down in the comment section below. Best of luck in week 4, Bruno Boys Nation.